Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fleet Europe Virtual Fleet Week. This is the final webinar of our exciting Fleet Week that we organized from the 12th until the 16th of October. We have seen during the week that fleet electrification is high on the agenda, not only of corporate fleet managers, but also at the side of the suppliers. And we are really happy with the success that this Fleet Week has given us and the insights that the expert speakers have brought. My name is Steven Schoofs. I'm working for Fleet Europe and I will try to be the moderator of this last webinar of the virtual Fleet Week. The webinar is, of course, an informative webinar. And so this means that if you would like to copy and paste information from this webinar, you need to inform us upfront, because the expert speakers have also shared some information specifically for this webinar, and this should of course be respected. We are really thankful that today's webinar can be organized together with Webfleet Solutions, one of the most promising telematics and technology companies in our industry. And so they are the right fit for this final session of the Virtual Fleet Week. What are we going to do today? You see it on the screen. We are going to talk about implementation, ladies and gentlemen. We had 4 exciting webinars so far, but today it's all about how to implement EVs in your corporate fleet. And we do that with a case study of SAP, followed by insights from our organizing partner and sponsor, Webfleet Solutions. So first, I will have, and I hope so, animated discussion with Stefan Krautwasser. He is head of global fleet at SAP. And afterwards, Taco van der Leij, Vice President Webfleet Solutions Europe, will give us more insight about how the commercial fleet side in terms of electrification is developing and what kind of trends that he is seeing into the market to stimulate even fleet electrification in the near future. For your information, at the end of the webinar, like we always do, there is a Q&A. So if you have a question, then please send the question via the chat function in this webinar tool, because we will moderate at the end a nice Q&A session together with the expert speakers. But let's kick off. And my first guest today is Stefan Krautwasser. He is head of global car fleet at SAP. Everyone, I think, knows SAP. Stefan, welcome to Fleet Europe. Welcome to the Virtual Fleet Week. I know that you are really busy, so it's really thankful that you could free up some time for us and for the audience. We would like, of course, to discuss with you a little bit how you implemented electric vehicles within SAP. But let's start first by describing what is SAP exactly for those people that might not know what SAP is about, and also give a little bit more detail about your current car fleet so that the audience has already a nice picture about your company. Is that possible that you can start with that? So detailing a little bit the business of SAP and the setup of the car fleet currently.
Yes, for sure. Thanks for the warm welcome, Stephen. I'm very happy for your invitation to today's webinar. And hopefully, yes, I can give you a brief introduction of what we are doing at SAP in regards to our electrification of the car fleet. And yes, for all of you who don't know SAP, I give you as well a little bit a hint of what SAP is doing, what is our service area for you. So maybe we are going directly into the presentation of not losing too much of the time. Here we are. So we are the world's largest provider of enterprise application software. We have more than 400,000 customers in more than 180 countries worldwide, a customer base of over 100,000 employees. I think the figures are really great, and I can only tell you a little bit about my personal experience of this company, what I really like of SAP. SAP is still a young company, but still a very agile company, looking forward for innovation. And I'm really happy that we have really an integrated reporting, not only focusing on financial KPIs, but as well on sustainability KPIs. And of course, that helps us as well from a fleet perspective in driving forward our KPIs, our goals and visions. And yes, we have a clear strategy that we would like to electrify our fleet by 2025 with up to 30% of our fleet, and that's following as well our corporate strategy, where we have a very clear and precise goal that we would like to have a net zero carbon emission by 2025 of 0. So I think that's really good, and I like to be part of this company. And maybe I can show you a little bit on the next slide as well, our tasks and our activities in the way of transmitting SAP into a sustainability company. What you can see here is a little few figures of our own company fleet. We have a fleet of worldwide 27,000 vehicles, and currently we are talking about 3,600 electrified cars overall. That's 13% of our fleet. Our clear goal is to have 30% overall in 2025, which I personally think is really a challenge. That's nothing where we would say, okay, that's easy to go, and it's coming from nowhere. No, we have to really invest, and I'm very thankful that I have a great team that is supporting those investments, having great ideas about how we can talk and communicate to our employees, to our stakeholders, to our management in really convincing, but as well trying to argue with facts and figures about electrification. And I'm very happy that the electrification of the car fleet is one of the topics where financial KPIs and sustainability KPIs coming along and going into the same direction. And maybe I've provided you a little picture as well about the powertrains we have in Germany, where we can really see as well the trend in the current German fleet, which is by far the largest fleet we have within SAP, and therefore as well our focus in the global car fleet department is of course as well always the German fleet with a size of 17,000 cars overall. And really what I like in the small picture on the right hand side is that you can see there's a clear trend, going away from a clear diesel fleet, going into a more electrified fleet. You can see here as well that we have an increasing number of plug-in hybrids and full electrified cars, and the numbers are going into the right direction. What you can see as well, and maybe I know that for a lot of countries, especially in Europe, diesel cars are not the most important ones. It's more petrol cars, and here you can see as well an increase. And maybe you can ask, okay, why do we see this? That's coming out of a German trend. So we had a huge discussion starting around about 2 years ago about diesel bans in big cities. And therefore, we have changed a little bit as well here the policy and opened it up as well for petrol cars. Maybe as well for your better understanding of what we are doing at SAP and why we are doing it, especially in Germany, we are talking about a benefit fleet. So that's a fleet for our employees, and it's a fleet of vehicle cars. So it's when we are talking about a vehicle, it's all of them, almost all of them, only a handful others are really cars, nothing else, no trucks, no other things. Maybe coming to the last.
Sorry.
Yeah, if I still got 2 minutes, 1 minute.
No problem.
Give
Continue.
me the chance as well to go on the charging options, because I said, okay, and Celine, maybe you can go to the next slide. Thanks for that. So what you can see here is that, and I said it's not that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that we will go into this direction. For us, important thing is that when you're going to electrify your fleet and talk about those things, the real challenge is that those cars need to have the option to be charged. We are going on a three-pillar model in here. We have a clear, and we are starting a new program as well in 2021 with a charging at home project to offer our employees the possibility to charge their cars as well at home, and we are covering the costs. On the second pillar, it's on the road, where we as well are working together with two operators, helping our employees to anywhere in Europe recharge their cars. And the last pillar is, of course, as well, charging points in our SAP locations. Currently in Germany, we are talking about more than 460 charging points that we are offering to our employees. Thanks, Stephen. That's a very short and brief introduction into SAP. There's a lot to talk about, and as well, I like to talk about the SAP fleet, but this was it in a nutshell.
Perfect. Then thank you very much for picturing SAP and your fleet. Of course, we would like to know what the, let's say, key steps were in implementing your EV fleet. And perhaps, Celine, you can go back to the previous slide where we see a little bit the structure of the fleet. One of the most challenging things, but also the first thing that a fleet manager probably needs to do, is to create a business case and to convince his top management and his internal stakeholders. How did you do that? What were some kind of things where you said, okay, this was really important at SAP to start our electrification project by convincing the management and the stakeholders internally that we all go into the same direction?
I personally think that's a continuous challenge. So it's nothing where you can say, okay, we have done this the last 5 years, now it's done, everyone is convinced, and now we can go ahead. It's really continuous going on. We have very luckily really a corporate strategy that's as well focusing on sustainability. So we have a very clear mindset in our board, in our upper management, and everyone is convinced that when we are investing into sustainability, we are doing the right investments for the future. And if we would, and if we are saying we would like to support our customers, we always need to be a front runner in those activities. And this is why it was a kind of easy convincing from that perspective. The more important topic is as well that within our integrated reporting, we have as well very clear KPIs defined, where we can now say, okay, if we have not only financial KPIs in focus, but as well sustainability KPIs, we can work on that. And we can go as well to our stakeholders, to our upper management and say, look here, if you would like to fulfill this and that, if you would like to reduce your CO2 emission, we need to do this and that. And that's an investment on first hand. But look here, this is the roadmap. This is how the TCO costs of the whole fleet will decrease over time. I think that's a very easy way of convincing those people. But of course, you need to have such kind of strategy in place, which we luckily have at SAP. Okay. But maybe just one addition to that, very important for us, it's not only the management, it's as well the employees. We have a user-chooser fleet, and we can do a lot of things, but as well communication towards our employees, our internal customers, is really crucial to convince them that electrification is the right way for the fleet.
Okay, so you making the perfect bridge, let's say, to the second step. I know you explained it, that the setup of your fleet is perhaps a little bit different than for most companies, in the sense that you have a benefit fleet. Normally in a company, you are going to look who is eligible for a company car, and then now with fleet electrification, probably you need to do some profiling based on where the people are living, what the family situation is, to determine who can be eligible to drive a battery electric vehicle, a plug-in hybrid vehicle, and so on. Did you do a profiling, or is the situation of the fleet so unique that no profiling was needed?
It's a little bit a mixture of all of that. So we are not actively profiling our employees in this regard. We are as well looking on a very high level perspective of that, on that. Yeah, we know that we have as well colleagues in sales, in consulting, that are on a regular basis going long distances with those cars, and we know that for some of them a plug-in hybrid might not be the right vehicle for them. But we have overall a company car policy that is not giving us the way of saying, look here, you are the right one for a battery electric vehicle or for a plug-in hybrid, or you still need to take a diesel car or a petrol based car. But what we are doing is a lot of communication. We are explaining the pros and cons of every vehicle to our employees already at the beginning. So when they are on the way on ordering a new car, they already get a kind of information which vehicle would fit for my own needs. Of course, it's still their own decision. They're saying, okay, I want to have a plug-in hybrid, even if I'm driving 60, 17,000 kilometers per year. Okay, it's their decision. So we can only talk to them and say, look here, there are some arguments, maybe it's not the right thing for you. Overall, I need to say, it's leveraging out. Yeah, if you always go for the average, you have a lot of people, of course, maybe not the right vehicle for them from an overall or from a fleet manager's perspective, but overall, I would say up to 80–90%, even higher maybe, it's going into the right direction. But it's a lot about communication, and I think that's the right way to do it. If you are looking on the tax regulations and the benefits the people are taking from their local governments in taking an electrified cars, it's very tough to discuss with them that they cannot go for such a car, because they need to pay money for it. And therefore, we keep it up to the employees. We talk a lot to them, what is the right way, as well from a sustainability perspective. And overall, that's our experience. That works pretty well.
Stefan, you were saying that management and top management needs to be a front runner. So this means that also they are switching to electric vehicles.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, our CFO Luka Mucic is driving an i3 BMW, and we are of course very happy to see that as well from a top management perspective. They are going into this way, and they are not only talking about it, but they walk the talk. Yeah, they are really going for it. And as well, you can see our CEO who has made his way to Davos earlier this year with a hydrogen car, which is as well was a very great experience. He has got a lot of, he made a lot of experience with that, because he was really saying, I would like to do that, and I would like to take this challenge. And it was not that easy that he expected, but he said, okay, look here, it's working, but still a lot of challenges that we need to go for such kind of new alternatives to a normal consumption engine.
Okay. The third step that I have here in front of me on my paper is related to the cost efficiency. Corporate fleets, since years, they need, of course, to balance out the total cost of ownership Now, if you look at the list price of the electric vehicle, then that list price is higher than that of an ICE vehicle. So how did you determine the cost efficiency of your electric fleet, and what were kind of the parameters in terms of cost that you took into account?
We are very closely comparing the TCOs, to be honest, and that was very difficult at the beginning because we simply missed the experiences with that. We don't know, for 5-10 years ago, when you're buying an electrified car, what is at the end. So we are buying those cars. I need to say it's a purchased fleet, especially in Germany. And we don't know, okay, at the end of the life cycle of the car, what will we get out of the reselling of the car? So a little bit very high assumptions we need to make. Nevertheless, we started with that. Now we really have experience with that. And we can say from a TCO perspective, especially battery electric vehicles, they are on a level of -30–40% of a normal diesel engine. And this is as well overcoming all of the starting investments into charging infrastructure, into the prices itself at the beginning. And therefore, yes, we can see as well from a cost perspective, that's working out. It's starting, and it's as well, you need to take an investment at the beginning. But when you look on the overall perspective as well over years, you can see that those investments are paying out and you're coming into the right way. And we are comparing here really repair costs, maintenance of the car, investments into the car, fueling or charging of the cars that we are having. And we still see that for small cars like a Renault Zoe or even higher classified cars, whatever you will take, for, maybe Jaguar I-Pace, whatever, that this is working out and you can really save money. Let me just a little bit add on the plug-in hybrids as well, because I know especially in Germany we have a huge discussion about those cars. Are they sustainable? Are they cost efficient or not? And here I can only state, yes, it depends on the right behavior of the driver. First of all, they need to charge their cars. And our experience is if they have the possibility to charge their cars, as well, the TCOs are going down. Because still the power is cheaper than fuel, and it's paying out, but you need to offer possibilities to charge those cars.
Okay. The fourth step is in terms of how did you select the right vehicles, but perhaps also coming back to the fact that you have a benefit fleet, perhaps for you this is less applicable. Is it so that people get a budget and they can choose whatever model they would like, or how does it work?
Of course, there are a few limitations for it, but overall, yes, I would say yes, they're getting a budget like we have it as well for leasing contract. Out of this budget, they can pick and choose out of a broad variety of cars, a lot of models that they can choose. Of course, we have some restrictions, in case of horsepower, cylinders, performance versions of cars are not allowed because we say, okay, that doesn't make sense. And as well, from consumption engines, as well, the CO2 emission is of course limited. But overall, they can pick and choose the models they like to choose. And we have, of course, because we have this clear goal of 30% of electrified cars, we have an own interest of bringing those electrified cars as well into our fleet, especially the battery electric vehicles. And yes, we are offering them to our employees as best as we can. Of course, it's as well always a kind of are they coming from a TCO perspective into the right level? At the beginning, we had really tough discussions with the OEMs, I need to say, but at the moment it's working pretty good. As well, we are getting now the right models for battery electric vehicles, because even I would say the situation at the moment is still that you have a lot of little bit smaller cars like a Renault Zoe or all of them, and then the upper class. But the biggest fleet is of course more the middle class segment. And here it's getting interesting once we are getting in 2021 or even 2022 really a huge variety. But we would like to offer them because currently in every regards we see coming out of a TCO perspective and as well as a sustainable perspective, of course, these are the right cars that we should offer to our employees.
So, but it's, for example, with the extending offering of electric vehicles that we see on the market, that also in 2021 and 2022 will come onto the market. It's not directly your goal, let's say, to work with a selected number of car manufacturers and then see what kind of range of electric or electrified vehicles they can offer to your employees. You will continue with, let's say, giving a wide range of brands and models to the employees.
Yeah, this is our overall company car policy that's very open as well for the employees, because it's a benefit for them and they should choose the right car for them. Yes, there are limitations, not every brand is offered, but I would say the big brands are in there, yes, and it's our idea that every really employees can pick and choose the models and brands that they have. There are some restrictions. Yes, we have a lot of requests coming to additional brands, but overall I would say really the vast majority of brands are in and that they can pick and choose. Yes, that's for sure. What we always do is to have a look on the TCO overall, and if we are seeing, okay, maybe prices for this car is too high or operational costs are too high, then we are going and take a decision that certain models are coming out, but we are only doing this in very rare cases.
Okay, coming now to the charging infrastructure, you already introduced it. So Celine, perhaps we can move back to that slide. We saw on that slide, of course, that you have at-home charging installations. You have also charging infrastructure at SAP offices, and there is the possibility to charge on the road. Do you give your employees sort of a recommendation that they need to try to charge at the office because that is perhaps more efficient or cheaper, or is there some kind of guidance for them?
Yes, it's at the end, and this is our experience, we are happy if they charge overall. So especially for the plug-in hybrids, it's very good that you can offer a possibility to charge overall. And now we are all across Europe under COVID-19, and charging at the SAP locations there is very limited because the people are working from home, and therefore as well this pillar is more important than it was in the year before. With the charging points that we have in 2019, I can only say I would say we had in average 99% of them have been used over the day, so it was very, very high. So yes, I personally would say that if the people have the possibility to charge at home, that's the best way they can do it, because normally your car is standing overnight, no one is touching it, you can use perfectly the time to recharge the car. Normally that helps you throughout the whole day, and that's the best possibility. Of course, not working for people who are on the road, driving in sales to customers. That's a different angle that you need to tackle as well. But when we are coming from a kind of SAP employee working, for example, as a developer, have a commuting distance from 20 to 30 kilometers, it's the best really to use charging infrastructure at home. Second best to use it at SAP, because here the resources or the charging points are very limited, and It's as well for our employees who don't have the possibility to install a wall box, for example, at their home place because they have no parking space or whatever. Then this would be the second option. Overall, we see that charging on the road is the less important pillar because normally, especially for plug-in hybrids, they are not using it. Why should I wait for 30 minutes until I can charge for additional 40 kilometers of electric driving? That's not what the people normally do. They only do it if they are on the road, going on vacation, going to a customer trip. But overall, that's the less important topic, especially for plug-in hybrids. Maybe it's changing when we are going to battery electric vehicles, but as well from a usage point of view, it's the pillar that is not used from our colleagues.
Okay. The sixth step is monitoring, managing your electric vehicle fleet. You talked already about driver behavior for plug-in hybrid vehicles. They need to drive them correctly, charge them, and so on. But also from SAP side, I can imagine that you would like to know who is really driving well, what is the status of the battery degradation, etc., etc. Are you using a certain technology? Are you using certain platforms to manage and monitor your electric fleet?
Yeah, we are in a very lucky situation, I need to say. So we are, as I said, we are a software company and we are offering as well our own software for charging infrastructure. And we of course can use the software and we are using them, not in every location, but in many locations where we are getting a lot of data that we can analyze, that we can take into consideration for our TCO. And that helps us, of course, to monitor the usage of the cars, how they are used, how many, how often they are charged, what is the power they have charged overall. And yes, that's of course helping us and is as well supporting the overall strategy. Where we have a little gap at the moment, I would say, is to get a lot of data from the car itself. But when we are talking about such kind of car, we need to be as well a little bit careful because we are talking about data privacy. We are talking about workers' councils that we need to convince to analyze this data as well. So we need to consider this as well. But overall, I would say yes, if you want to monitor, you need to have such kind of software in place. And yes, we are in a lucky situation out of our home turf that we can pick and choose out of our own company software.
Okay, yes, and I can imagine indeed if your company headquarters is based in Germany and your largest fleet is in Germany with, let's say, the sensitivity around everything that is data privacy and the working councils who have quite some power, I can imagine that installing the telematics, for example, is not an easy to go exercise for the fleet in Germany. Step number 7.
Yes, of course, but still we are trying to have a very good relationship with our workers' council, and I'm very glad you asked about stakeholders. Workers' council, of course, is as well a stakeholder, and I need to say, hey, they are going into the same way. They are convinced as well. Of course, they have their own goals, yeah, which is as well protecting employees, yeah, which is good and fair enough, but they are stakeholders as well, and I'm happy to see that they are thinking in the almost same direction like we do from a management perspective.
Okay, the final step, step 7, is going into the direction of smart mobility, new mobility. We are talking here about electric cars. Do you also think, for example, about introducing electric bikes, electric scooters, and so on, to even accelerate the electrification around mobility within SAP?
Clearly, yes, yeah, but a little bit more limited than we are doing it with the car fleet itself. Yeah. Our employees have the possibility as well for a bike leasing, for e-bike leasing, where they can say, look here, if I don't want to drive by car to work, yeah, I can as well take a bicycle, which is the best way of sustainability driving, I would say. And therefore, yes, we do this as well. We are working on shuttle services as well. So within the locations, within the buildings, we have a small shuttle services for our employees to bring them to other locations. And we are trying to work on a model how we can use e-shuttles here as well. This is one direction, but as well, coming from a smart mobility point of view, it's not all about cars at SAP. It's as well that we can see that we are, I would say, within a young generation that is coming now to SAP, working for SAP. We are as well looking for alternatives to cars, because many of them, they don't see a car as benefit. They are working in big cities like Berlin, Munich, and they don't have the possibility. They don't have a parking space for their car, and they are looking for alternatives. And we are running at the moment a test project in Berlin, where we're saying, hey, look here, instead of a company car, you're getting a virtual budget, and out of this virtual budget, you can SAP pays you your mobility costs. For example, if you're going for public transportation, if you're using bike or car sharing, yeah, we are paying you back the cost until you reach your budget. Right. Okay. And by the way, it's now running for 6 months with really great experience from the employee, great feedbacks, and it's going into, for me, kind of next step of mobility. Not working everywhere, but I think it's a good step as well when we are talking about sustainability, mobility.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan Keltwasser of SAP. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for Stefan, we will come back at the end with a short Q&A round. So send your question via the chat function. And then we are now moving on with our sponsor of this session, Webfleet Solutions. If everything is correct, I have in the room Taco van der Lee, who is the Vice President of Webfleet Solutions Europe. Taco, welcome.
Hello, Steve.
Welcome, Taco, and thank you very much for the support. What did you think of the story of Stefan and SAP? Are they going in the right direction?
No, I think it's clearly a very interesting story, and I liked it to listen a lot. It's for sure the right direction, and I think maybe also to hand over to my own story. One of the key differences, of course, that Stefan talked about benefit car. So the driver is actually in control. The driver decides what he's going to do, where he's going to drive to, how much he needs, but also will be in charge of his charging of his vehicle. And you see definitely a difference. So I will be talking with you about operational fleet, so basically where cars are being used to improve your operations. And there's actually more the company that needs to be, let's say, in that. If somebody does not charge your vehicle, you cannot do your task or your jobs. While actually the other benefit, you can still take public transport or a taxi to get to your work. What I also like, I think, is basically where he managed that the data becomes more important. And I think that's also one of the benefits from electric vehicles. You actually get more data that is available to you. Okay. And you mentioned basically one thing, maybe the vehicle data is not always there. That's exactly, I think, also where telematics comes in. So telematics is your tool to collect vehicle-specific data in that sense.
So you can help each other then after this webinar. So this is great. Paco, thank you very much. So we are eager to listen to your presentation. Unlock the power, the roadmap to implement your EV fleet. If you are ready, you can start. Thank you.
Pleasure to do so. So Webfleet Solutions is Europe's #1 fleet management service provider. We've been in the field formerly known as TomTom Telematics, and now part of the Bridgestone group. And then I will take you through what I already mentioned, actually the way into electrification of operational fleet. And I think, let me test if this works, yes. as Stefan already mentioned, and what you've seen, actually, electric fleets are all around us. And maybe in the past, it was something of the future, and maybe some eco geeks, maybe sometimes with a little bit more money, they bought an electric vehicle to try it out. But now what you see is also that the main brands are bringing electric vehicles to the market, and actually, although not on a very specific name, they are starting now using their main, let's say, vehicles or categories to bring it in, like the Mini or the Fiat 500, and they particularly, I think, address a important market aspect. But the question is then also, okay, so what's next? How is more commercial, operational fleets being prepared to do so? Let me take you a little bit back still. Where does this come from? And I'm sure you're all aware, a key driver actually for this is maybe are more government related. Also, of course, driven by a general public demand for more sustainability. Large cities are creating emission-free zones or even emission-free cities. And there will be moments where some cities will ask actually any delivery into the city to be fully emission-free. At the same time, the EU actually came with regulations to penalize car manufacturers when the overall emissions of the fleet that they sold come above a certain threshold. And I can tell you those are serious penalties. I think this year is still more or less a bit open, but as of next year, these will kick in. And these are quite important also to bring those companies to deliver more type of vehicles. Already mentioned is the charging points. So although those are ramping up, although you would mention 7.3 million is that a lot, that is far not enough yet, but actually you see more and more points coming. And I think that's a very important development as well. Electric fleet. So last year, about 1% of the total fleets, global fleet was electric, 2.6% of the sales. But the expectation is that in 2024, about 10% of the global fleets are actually electric. And actually to reach that, you need to have a massively amount more sales into that area. Also expected in 2022 that actually the overall TCO for an electric vehicle is the same of a combustion engine. So basically meaning you compare not just, let's say, the usage, but also the purchase cost of the vehicle. Plus the infrastructure. So I think those are big and important steps that will drive this up. And then in the end, ending to as expectation of in 2030, an outlook of 245 million electric vehicles on the road. So I think this is massive. We're talking about a growth of 36% annually. And the question is then not, will it come now? It's here, it's coming. And I think more is when as a company do you hop on, let's say, the bus towards electrification. The number of vehicles is also increasing, mentioned it. So last year there were about 100 different types of vehicles that are electric. This year already 180, and also particularly driven by European pressure or government pressure. This will further ramp up. But what's it in for the company? And maybe this is maybe even the most important one. So of course we have the whole sustainability, that is one, but also if you look at the maintenance of an electric vehicle, because it has much less moving parts, it's about only 30% of a combustion engine vehicle. And actually the usage, so the pay that you have for your electricity versus the gasoline is in the same amount. So already these are big steps ups versus the current one. And then basically, if you see, yeah, it altogether brings opportunities for the company. So you have lower costs of running your vehicles, both in maintenance and in usage cost. Of course, we see, and also just mentioned, the purchase costs for electric vehicles are still relatively high or higher, but there are more and more public incentives to help that, also because there is an interest in overall, both from companies and from governments, to reduce carbon footprint. I think maybe one point is that the data that helps company with this is actually maybe a really interesting point. So electric vehicles are actually more modern, so we get much more data availability. And I think if you start using that, and also if you take this step now already, it will help you to take a let's say, versus your competition. So basically, it will help you in your leadership position as a company versus the rest of the industry. You can wait until the rest has do it, but also there's some complexities that you need to start build into your company, how you plan it, how you deal with the charging. Maybe there are different processes in the company, and I think the earlier you start using this, actually, the quicker you can get there. And be ready for this type of, let's say, challenge. And one thing is the planning. And I've already, if you see, this is a profile of our passenger fleet vehicles, and you can see the number of vehicles versus the mileage that they drive on a day. And this is actually the maximum driven mileage on a specific vehicle. And you can see, actually, on average, it's about 200 kilometers. I think people don't really know, companies don't necessarily know what drivers really do on a day. And if you look at the overall thing, you don't drive that many kilometers on a day. Of course, it's different for a commute, because then it's maybe less than 100. But particularly for a commercial fleet or an operational fleet, it's different. And you can see already there's quite a number of vehicles that are much have a much longer range than this peak. And of course, particularly passenger cars in black here, and the Teslas are basically leading that. Now, I can imagine that for operational fleets, you don't want to give your drivers a Tesla, or I'm sure they would love that. So you could give that as an extra benefit. But if you're still, let's say, looking at your overall company objectives, maybe a Fiat or a Peugeot Citroën is quite good enough as well. So I think we are getting there. And also those, let's say, commercial vehicles, LCVs, will further actually increase their driving range. So if you know what your fleet is doing, you can plan that very well. You can already start electrifying part of your fleet. I'm just giving you an example more out of interest, what's the same kind of picture for trucks. You can see actually two bubbles. The first bubble is actually the local delivery. So that's actually more last mile delivery into cities. So that's quite an important one. And the long one is the long haul. And you can see with long haul, we're not there yet. Also there, of course, you'll have more and more, let's say, charging points on the way. But the short range is the one that is important, and that you need to start planning ahead. If you cannot find the vehicle that is already there, actually, then you would need to look a little bit further. One of the advantages of electric vehicles is that it's actually easier to build an electric vehicle out of all kind of parts and batteries and things that are in the market. It's much more complex to build a combustion engine with all the research and actually the past experience that you need for that. So because of that, what you see is that there will be more and more small companies popping up, building very specialized, dedicated, small electrified vehicles. And you can use them ideally for small deliveries, or actually help them be built to the specific needs of your company. You could make it with a cooler inside, or a heater for your pizzas, or something else. Interestingly, of course, is also the price points are below the current price points of the commercial electric fleets available. So I think if you know the behavior of your fleet and the purpose, this is something to consider and look at. So actually, what is happening? Why is not everybody doing it? I think there's still some of the challenges. One is what I call still range anxiety, and actually I would say, well, if you really look objectively at this, it should not necessarily be there. I think the other one is that actually, why should I invest now? Well, every year vehicles are getting better. So if I wait 2 years, probably the range of those vehicles are much further away, and probably the whole charging infrastructure is better there as well. And I think for those, actually, the key reason to bring in telematics can be help actually to say bring that point forward where you do the overall planning. So we can help actually by, let's say, assessing what you need as a company, and actually how you can integrate EVs into your planning and take your overall cost into account. And then actually, when you've made the decision, to manage and monitor where your charging needs to be, where it is, create all kind of displays, dashboards to monitor it, or actually create notifications if things are not there when you think about it. So, and again, if somebody forgot to charge this vehicle, you can actually create a notification to the main fleet manager, and then actually in the morning you can decide actually that they should send another driver. That is where maybe the vehicle is at home. Obviously, I mean, still a lot of companies keep the vehicles at the company side, where it's much more easier in that case to build a charging infrastructure. And so that is once you're planning, you need to be a bit adaptive, but you can plan around that. And here, so something showing is that we've recently integrated into Webfleet is actually where you can see all the charging points on the map. So that's important and interesting information. With that, you can also build and use our planning tools around that. So actually, if you can integrate your range and your charging into your planning, then all those kind of things become much easier. But I think first you need to start looking at is which part of the fleet can you actually electrify right now without having to charge during the day. That's already a quick stepping point, but if not, I think there's all kinds of ways to get that around. And then if still things go wrong, and I need to share one of the initiatives of one of our new partner company, Bridgestone. So one of their key retail chains is First Stop, and First Stop in Spain built its own infrastructure for EV charging. So basically, most of the First Stop workshops are being equipped with it. They also created a ultra-fast charging point network, and they basically are equipping the main corridors in Spain with that. So actually that you know en route there's a certain point where you have this ultra-fast recharging. And then there's the road assistance with fans, but also these small vehicles that actually can bring, well, let's say, drive with a small battery up to your vehicle and then do a small power charge when everything went wrong. So you can actually get people still on the road. And of course, everything equipped with Webfleet would help even to integrate those kind of services much better. So coming now to a conclusion, I think it's there. I think we all know that sustainability. We want this, and I think people are more looking at, yeah, so why are we not doing it yet? We're waiting until things come better. I think you can already do it for a part of your fleet and should do it if you can do it, because if you start now, you will need to change some of your processes and how you work as well. If you wait changing that and you wait for 3-4 years, you will see that the ones that actually have implemented that first will be ahead when this will further be picking up. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Taco van der Leij of Webfleet Solutions. Thank you very much for the insights and also for the fluent presentation. We are coming to the Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have a question for the expert speakers, send it via the chat function. There are already many questions that came in. So let's kick off. Of course, people are interested to know a little bit more, Stefan, about how you deal with your fleet. I'm going to pick a few because it will not be possible to have all of the questions answered. The first one is, how do you manage the installation of charging stations, wall boxes at home for your employees? Did you develop partnerships with energy providers and energy card providers? Do you pay the full package for home charging? Is it in a leasing arrangement? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? You are on mute, I think.
Yes, for sure, I can do it. I had a little bit of question to my side.
Can you hear me, Stefan?
Yes, I can hear you again. A little bit issue with my internet connection. I heard that you're managing the infrastructure and the wall box at home from the employees, and are you able to hear me again? I can see you.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. I just go in its direction and try to answer it very brief and short. We have a model that they're just substituting our employees. So the employees are buying the wall boxes on their own. They are getting a kind of money back from the company, which is an easy way of it, because then the employees are in charge of monitoring their wallbox, if repairs are needed, if anything else is needed. We are out of this whole topic of reinstalling and everything. Of course, for the operational costs, we will take care about beginning 2021. So, for example, power costs, as well operational costs with our providers, and we are working especially in Germany, and that's a strategy in other countries as well. We are working together with one company who is doing for us the implementation, so in the order of our employees, and as well in the operational model towards ourselves. So we are getting back, of course, the data that we need. We are getting back the costs from them, but we have a single source where we can operate the whole charging infrastructure at home. But it's not our infrastructure, it's the infrastructure of our employees, which helps us in many ways to go for this model.
Okay, what do you do? Yes, yeah. And related to that, a question also, what do you do? For example, I am an SAP employee. I order an electric vehicle. I drive for 1 year with that electric vehicle. I have a charging station at home. And then after 1 year, I move to another place or I leave the company. What is then the rule?
That's the risk that we are taking. So we said an employee is ordering it, and we are just supporting with money, so to say. And if someone is leaving SAP, okay, bad luck for us. That's why we have a benefit car system to keep as long as we can the employees with us. But of course, we all know it happens. Yeah, we have a fluctuation as well. But we have considered this from the overall beginning as well, considered into the costs, and overall, if you just compare your fluctuation rate against the cost that you are taking, yes, there is a certain risk, but we take this risk and we go for this model. Alternative would be to go for a leasing model with the figures and the amounts of installed wall boxes that we are planning to have. We think it's the right way to go with this risk.
Okay. Okay, I have 2 questions for Taco. Taco, do you think that in terms of scope of electric vehicles, this is more, let's say, B2B, a commercial related topic than it is a private customer related topic? And do you see an evolution that, yes, in the upcoming years, that perhaps the private market will take over or vice versa?
Well, I think indeed at the moment it's still more the businesses and the companies and the lease companies that are dealing with it. So somebody needs to take the first step. It's probably also related still to the purchase cost. I think when the costs significantly go down by driving and having a vehicle, and I'm pretty sure you all see it when you're just driving around. There's a lot of electric vehicles around you, and I think that will further come up. I mean, I have a private vehicle myself. I'm not that happy to be part of a lease scheme. And actually, the vehicles Zoe is an electric vehicle, and that's basically because it's fun driving it as well. And I think that will change.
Okay. The second question, also for you, is do you think that the EV market will grow even when the incentives and the subsidies received are going to be reduced perhaps in the upcoming years?
Well, I think if you look at the EU program that is now set up, right, where they need to, or they basically get a penalty for their overall portfolio of vehicles that they sell. But basically, that's an incentive program that I think will go on until 2030. So the drive to come with cheaper electric vehicles by manufacturers is quite strong, and that will happen. I think what you see, one of the key differences, of course, is combustion engine. We are competing with electric vehicles, although maybe the first electric vehicle was maybe one already 120 years old, but basically we're competing with hundreds of years of research into combustion engines. They need to pick up, and all research now done, they try to also get it back. So I think there's a big stimulus, and car manufacturers will come with cheaper vehicles. I think the infrastructure, you see it coming up, but also that will solve problems. It's just temporary limitations to electric driving vehicles. I mean, in the end, if you look at it, gasoline stations, they should worry in that sense, because since I drive my Zoe, I don't stop at gasoline stations anymore. And actually, I'm losing weight because I don't buy all the sweets that are for sale there at this moment. And I think those kind of things you need to look. Electricity is everywhere. I mean, look around the street, it's there. You just need to get a charging point, and that's, I think, the next step. So I think it will continue the way it is.
Okay. Stefan, with the introduction of EVs in your company, did you need to work with two sets of budgets? Because you work with budgets for employees, let's say, they have a budget, they can choose a car. Imagining, for example, that the setup of the budget for an electric vehicle is perhaps a little bit different and perhaps higher than that of an ICE vehicle, or do you say, no, we are working with just one budget, and within that budget, it's up to the employee, he can or choose an ICE vehicle or an electric vehicle, and it's we as a company that tries to guidance them towards the most suitable model or powertrain for him or for her. So one or two budgets. There is, again, there is a little audio interference, I think, which is a pity. No. Hello?
It's only
Yes.
one budget. But,
okay. One budget.
Okay. Better now?
Yes, I can hear you.
That should be for our attitude, and we're saying, okay, look here, if someone wants to take a battery electric vehicle, he gets an extra budget for it. He gets something on top, because currently we are supporting this electrification of the fleet, and he gets some extra budget on top. But it's only the kind of extraordinary money we spend out of a project mode that is helping the people to making their decision towards a fuel electrified vehicle. This is only working for battery electric vehicle, not for plug-in hybrids.
Okay. Question for Taco. Taco. No problem. Taco, of course, Webfleet is known also for its technology and telematics capabilities. Do you have some kind of information, some kind of, of guidance to give in terms of the return on investment of managing your EV fleet via telematics? What is, let's say, the cost efficiency then that you can secure via telematics?
Well, I think so the return on investment is of course important whenever you do an investment, and you need to look at the whole. I mean, one of the things that you can do, for example, with telematics very directly, you can help drivers to have a better driving style. That's both for combustion engines as well as for electric vehicles. For electric vehicles, you can maybe increase your reach, your driving range there by 20%, which is quite significant already. Which would mean that based on electricity average pricing cost, you probably will save up to 30 euros per month. Actually, for combustion engine, it's much more, because then you're talking, if you improve your driving style and you save about 20% of your fuel, up to 100 euros. But I think that's not the key point. I think the key point is first, because if you go to electric vehicles, you already make quite a step. And I think also from my personal experience, if you install infrastructure, in personal infrastructure, you can have a payback in about 6 months, and then the vehicle that you buy, an extra cost for that is probably 1.5 years more. So actually, to go and make the step, you need to have that 2-year limit to see that coming back. Again, it's also how you account for it. Part you can put part on the balance sheet, and part actually in operational costs. And I think there, if you look at that with your finance manager, I'm pretty sure you find a good solution. Again, it's telematics that help you planning those kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, unfortunately, we need to end this webinar here. I would like to thank Taco van der Leij and Stefan Krautwasser for their support and their expertise. Of course, also our sponsor of today, Webfleet Solutions. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have been enjoying this first virtual Fleet Week with 5 exciting webinars that we could organize from Monday until today. And in between, we also had the release of 2 virtual fleet launches, one with Polestar and today with Link & Co. The good news is that you can relive the webinars and also the virtual fleet launches on our website, fleeteurope.com. So if there is some information that you would like to re-see, to relive, then please take a look at our homepage of Fleet Europe website, and there you can find all the information about this first virtual Fleet Week. Of course, the topic of electrification is not going away with the end of this Fleet Week. It will stay on the agenda of you as a fleet manager, also on the agenda of the fleet suppliers, and high on the agenda of Fleet Europe. The editorial team will continue to bring information on the website and in the magazine. For example, the magazine that has just been published, the Guide to Fleet Electrification, in which you can find everything you need to know about fleet electrification. And as you see on the screen, we invite you for the Fleet Europe Summit. Of course, this summit will take place in a digital form, but one of the topics that we will discuss is fleet electrification and charging solutions, and the other one will be around connected technologies. So also there at the summit on the 17th and 18th of November, we will deep dive into the topics of this virtual Fleet Week. I hope you liked it. Thank you very much, and we look forward meeting with you again in a virtual way for the upcoming months on fleeteurope.com. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.